Hey everybody, this is Ray, and today we will be continuing our series on White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Today we will be discussing Chapter 10, White Fragility and the Rules of Engagement. I think this is my favorite chapter because we finally learn what racial stamina is. So let's dive on in. So she kind of just jumps in, and a lot of what she does in the beginning is talk about what not to do. And she really just talks about, these are the terms that white people set up for confronting them about their racism. And the number one rule is do not give me feedback on my racism under any circumstance. So, but, if you insist on breaking these rules, you must follow these additional rules. Proper tone, feedback must be given calmly. There must be trust in between us. So, yes, you have to trust someone in order to call them racist. I feel like that would be self-defeating. And then we got a lot of rules here. 11 rules in total. The contradictions in these rules are irrelevant. They function to obscure racism, protect white dominance, and regain white equilibrium. So basically, white people are setting up these rules for terms of conversation, and that these terms uphold racism. Now again, she is generalizing. Granted, it's based on her experience of accusing white people of racism. But still, while certainly some white people arrogantly set themselves apart from other white people by acting in this way, in my experience, it is not the norm. I had some choice words to say here on the screen. So basically what she's talking about is we sometimes depict looking for every incident we can find. So we go out, point our fingers and shout, "You're a racist." She acts like this is a very seldom happens, but it's like she ignores her own media. Like again, the Voxes or the Vices, the Now This that call every little thing racism. So it is far more common for sincere white people to agonize over when and how to give feedback to a fellow white person, given the ubiquity of white fragility. It's everywhere, but no one talks about it. No one mentions it, because those are the rules. So racism is the norm rather than the aberration. Feedback is key to our ability to recognize and repair our inevitable and often unaware collusion. In recognizing this, I try to follow these guidelines. Number one, how, when, and where you give me feedback is irrelevant. It is the feedback I want and need. Understanding that it is hard to give, I will take it anyway. I can get it. From my position of social, cultural, and institutional white power and privilege, I am perfectly safe and I can handle it. If I cannot handle it, it is on me to build my racial stamina. That's rule number one. Rule number two, thank you. So we finally learn what racial stamina is. It is the ability to bend over and take an accusation of racism with no Vaseline. That is what racial stamina is. And as a white person, you need to work on your racial stamina. The above guidelines rest on the understanding that there is no face to save and the game is up. I know I have blind spots in my unconscious investments in racism. She goes on, my investments are reinforced every day in the mainstream society. I did not set up the system, but it does unfairly benefit me. I do use it to my advantage, and I am responsible for interrupting it. Once again, I stated chapters ago that her goal is to interrupt racism. That is her stated goal. Her implied goal is more Marxist. But her stated goal is to interrupt racism. Not to end it, not to get rid of it, but to interrupt. I need to work hard to change my role in the system, but I can't do it alone. This understanding leads me to gratitude when others help me. So she goes on about that trust and others helping her. Still, I believe that when it comes down to this, I need to trust that you won't think I'm racist before I can work on my racism. So I guess what my comment here is that she believes that human nature is good. Like I said chapters ago, specifically chapter 5, where she creates the good-bad binary, she doesn't believe that being a racist, needing correction on being a racist makes you a bad person. She does not believe that people are bad. She believes systems are bad. She believes human nature is good and that human systems are bad, and thus those systems need to be upended in a Marxist-style revolution. So, this is her reaffirming her belief that human nature is good. Marxism believes that human nature is good, but it does not have the monopoly on that worldview. Let's see. The following guidelines on building trust include: don't judge, don't make assumptions, assume good intentions. And these are kind of criticisms. By emphasizing intentions over impact, this guideline privileges the intentions of the aggressor over the impact of their behavior on the target. In doing so, the aggressor's intentions become the most important issue. In essence, this guideline tells victims that as long as there was no intention to cause harm, they need to let go of it and move on. And what she is saying here is never let go of your victimhood. You are a victim. Cherish that. Do not let it go. Speak your truth. Okay, here we go. She's actually making an argument against speaking your truth, but it's not for the reasons you think. This is a very postmodern framework here. Again, if you're opposing Robin DiAngelo, it's likely you're not a postmodernist. Have I seen defensiveness, distancing behavior, silence, avoiding taking risk? Yes. But have I observed people not speaking their truth? No. More importantly, what if your truth is that you are colorblind? Because no one can actually be colorblind in a racist society. The claim that you are colorblind is not a truth. It is a false belief. So here, it's funny because, you could just use this on transgenderism. This isn't your truth. This is a false belief. And, postmodernism, critical theory wouldn't have that. But this is where that intersectionality comes into play to relegate the experience of white people based on their whiteness. So this is how, we see that postmodernism is collapsing upon itself, because if everyone has truth, then, everyone's, truths are equal. But then she has to say that all perspectives are not equally valid. This is where intersectionality comes to repair the inevitable collapse of postmodernism. So you need to rate people's experiences based off their victimhood statuses. And stating that your beliefs as truths cannot be... so we must distinguish between sharing your beliefs so that we can identify how they may be upholding racism, and stating your beliefs as truths that cannot be challenged. So, you can't challenge someone's truth, but you can call it a false belief and challenge that. That's basically what she's saying here. She's, I guess it's a postmodern pretzel she's working through. And that's what she's, writing about here. Postmodernism creates a little logical pretzel, and she's sorting it out here. And I think she does a good job because, if you're a postmodernist, you probably also believe in intersectionality and critical race theory as well. Moving on. The unexamined assumptions underlying these guidelines is that they can be universally applied. But because they do not account for unequal power relations, they do not function the same way across race. So, this is back to that critical race theory, also known as cultural Marxism. Okay, so now we're talking about the guidelines some more. An antidote to white fragility is to build up our stamina to bear witness to the pain of racism that we call. So, bend over and accept accusations of racism without Vaseline. That is what she's saying here. That is how you build up your racial stamina. If you're white, you must build up your racial stamina, or else you are upholding racism. But if someone does literally point a finger and say, you are a racist, this accusation is from a deep fear of progressive whites. Wow, so she's defending very aggressive calls. So what she goes on to do in this chapter is say that it does not matter how you accuse someone of racism, because they're the victim, they're right in their emotional response. That is her argument here. So she's justifying just an outright, you are racist. She's justified that. To let go of the messenger and to focus on the message is an advanced skill and is especially difficult to practice if someone comes at us with a self-righteous tone. If kindness gets us faster, I'm all for it, but I do not require anything from someone giving me feedback before I can engage with that feedback. No Vaseline. Many of us are not there yet, but this is what we need to work towards. So after, you're working on this and you got to say, thanks, may I have another. Now, this is where the religious overtones of this book really pick up. She is talking about sanctification. You're on a journey towards being perfected. But it's a very works-based journey, as we'll see later. Many of us are not there yet, but this is what we need to work towards. There is something that will help set you apart in this racially charged world. I've been in many white racial justice groups wherein the participants expended much energy making sure they were kind and compassionate. They were kind and compassionate to each other and didn't break trust. As I tried to show throughout this book, white people raised in Western society are conditioned into a white supremacist worldview because it is the bedrock of our society and its institutions. And she's repeated this several times, but she has not said which institutions. I assume she just means capitalism because she is a Marxist. And I repeat, stopping our racial patterns must be more important than working to convince others we don't have them. We do have them, and people of color already know we have them. Our efforts to prove otherwise are not convincing. An honest accounting of these patterns is no small task given the power of white fragility and white solidarity, but is unnecessary. So that is the end of this chapter. Again, we got to learn what racial stamina is, finally. And we know what her rules are. If you're white, you gotta accept being called a racist. And you have no rebut. You cannot argue that, because if you do, you're demonstrating white fragility. Heads I win, tails you lose. I'm Ray, and if you like this, leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you think. And if I've earned your subscription, please give it to me, so I can catch you on the next one.